Hey guys, and welcome to Your One Room Schoolhouse. My name is Mary Barfield, and if you're new here, I'm a homeschooling mama to a kindergartner and a second grader, and we are approaching our 2-year anniversary for homeschooling. Officially in a couple months, we will have homeschooled for 2 full years at that point. And with that special date coming up, I've been doing some introspective thinking and looking back on things over the last 2 years, and I realized that we have come a long way. We have evolved tremendously, not only my girls, but our homeschool, our style, my thought process around a lot of things when it comes to homeschooling. A lot has changed for us, and it's been all for the better. But with that, I've had some aha moments as a first-time homeschooling mom that I thought I'd share with you guys. Whether it's because you want to commiserate with me and relate to me and be like, oh my gosh, I did the same thing too, I don't feel alone. Or if you haven't even gotten started and you're like, hey, I'm gonna not do that and try and take her advice and save myself some heartache or just, frustration. So I think I have about eight, wow, I'm a homeschooling mom and I can't count. 8 takeaways, I think, right? Nope, just kidding. I have 7. I just checked my notes. I have 7 takeaways for you guys that I have, aha moments over the last 2 years, and hopefully they will be of some use to you guys in educational, or just you can commiserate along with me. Okay, number 1 stems from an irrational fear of not having socialized kids. It's probably the number 1 comment I get when I tell anybody who doesn't homeschool that we do homeschool. They're like, I wait for it. With bated breath, I'm like, oh, here it comes. Aren't you worried about socialization? You know what? I was that person 2 years ago. So I don't fault these people. I know it comes from a place of goodness and concern and just not knowing what homeschooling really is like, because I will tell you now, 2 years in, my kids are more socialized than they were when they were in regular traditional school. My oldest, by the way, just for a frame of reference, did go to a charter kindergarten school locally. And I will tell you, she is way more socialized than she ever was going to school. But again, it's just a lot of times they just don't know. If you've never homeschooled, you don't understand how much freedom you have to do all the activities and all the play dates and all the co-ops and field trips and everything. So my number 1 aha moment was, don't sign up for everything. You don't need to do all the activities. It's okay to not do any to start with and just get into your curriculum and start learning how to learn and teach and live this new lifestyle, because homeschooling is a lifestyle. And it's okay to just rest in that, right? I feel like we come from a culture where it's like, you've got to be going, you've got to be doing, you've got to be doing this, etc. And we don't need to. We can rest and breathe a little bit and enjoy our lives, especially on the younger years. They don't need to be doing 1,000,001 activities. So my biggest regret is that I signed us up for anything and everything our first year. And I live in an area where there are a lot of resources and a lot of amazingness, and you get FOMO really bad. You want to do this, you want to do that, you want to do that co-op, you want to go on that field trip. It's just not possible, because at a certain point we were just struggling to rush through our curriculum so we could then leave to go to X, Y, and Z event. And then that made us not really enjoy the homeschooling, the curriculum, the learning together as a family and just having that time together. It felt very stressed and very rushed. And halfway through my first homeschool year, I realized I was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, and I could not do it anymore. And I went from Mach 10 or Mach 1. I can't remember. Is it lower numbers or higher? I don't know. Went from going 1,000 miles per hour to a dead stop. I literally looked at the girls. I could tell they were run ragged. They were tired. I was like, we're going to stop everything. And they're like, okay, that's great. I could tell there was like a sense of relief for them. And then what we did was we took some time for a couple months and figured out, what did we want to do? And then we added in only just back a few things. And you know what? Those few things has been absolutely perfect. My kids, even just doing one thing a week, they are well socialized. They have a lot of friends. We've got some neighborhood kids that are our friends that homeschool. Our neighbors are one of them. So they get to interact with all of them all the time. We have a kids group that we're a part of. They do soccer in the spring and fall. And then they do a Ninja Warrior gym around the corner whenever we just feel like popping in for a gym time. They are well socialized, and not just with peers their age, which is what school, tells you. You have to sit in a room for 8 hours with 25 other kids the same age as you, but you don't get to actually talk to them because you've got to sit still and be quiet, or you're a distraction and you can't learn. Whereas my kids, we do events, we learn, they get to run around and play with all their friends that might be 5 years older than them or might be 4 years younger than them. So they're well versed in speaking to adults with good manners, and they're not afraid of adults. They're able to converse with them, but they're also easily able to walk over to a little 2-year-old girl and be like, hey, do you want to go play? I'll help you. So they're well socialized. And that was an irrational fear I had, and I wish I just didn't know better. I came from traditional schooling. I went to a private Catholic school my entire life. So I was part of the system. Even though it was private, I was still part of the educational system. So that was something new. I kind of had a break in my mind. Your kids can be well socialized and probably even better off. At least in my situation, they are. Number 2, and I am sure some of you more seasoned homeschool moms can feel this pain. You're sitting there, picture this. You've spent months researching the perfect curriculum for your kids, and you're like, this is going to be the ticket, this is going to be what clicks, and this is going to make our homeschool year so wonderful. And then about a couple weeks into that curriculum, you realize it's a travesty, it's a dumpster fire, it is the wrong curriculum for your kids. But you are like, I've just spent all that time researching, and I spent all that money on purchasing this curriculum. I feel like I have to make it work. There's just something in us. But the reality is, we homeschool to be able to customize to our kids, to be able to say, okay, this curriculum is a really good curriculum, but it's just not working for my kid, and that's okay. It might work for my second kid coming up behind them, who knows? But basically what I'm trying to say is, number 2, it is okay to drop a curriculum and start something new. A quarter of the way into the year, 3/4 of the way into the year, the school year. Do not worry about dropping something. Do not feel guilty about it. If it is the right move for your kid, do it. It's also okay to do it 2 or 3 times in 1 year. I did that our first year of homeschooling with math with my oldest. And now I felt so self-conscious about I had her do 3 maths. Yeah, I had her do 3 different maths her first year. But it was what she needed. And we finally landed on one that I'm feeling really good about. This was probably going to get us through at least elementary school, if not through middle school. So we do Math Mammoth, in case you're wondering. But during that time, that journey, I felt self-conscious. I felt guilty and I felt bad. I was like, I'm failing. I'm failing at homeschooling my kids in math. And now looking back, if I could just go back to my old Mary and just be like, listen, you will get through this. You will kiss a few frogs to find that prince of a math program for your kid, and it'll all work out. So don't feel bad. There will be moms out there that shame you and say, hey, and I'm serious. I know that sounds really aggressive. They will shame you. They will say, hey, you should just keep with your program with your kid. Why do you keep switching? That's detrimental to them. You are their mom or dad, and you know them the best. You know if it's working or not. And don't get me wrong, like, we pushed through with a lot of the curriculums. We spent more months and weeks on curriculums than we probably should have, because I felt self-conscious. But maybe that's what we needed to do to find the right program. You never know. But at the end of the day, don't feel bad if you do ultimately end up having to switch a curriculum and go in a different direction. It's going to be most likely what's right for your child. Number 3, this kind of ties into number 1, but it is okay to say no to activities, people, events. Being a homeschool parent, you feel like you need to get out and do all the things, but what I was realizing with saying yes to everything was that I kept having to say no to spontaneous events. Even something as simple as my next door neighbors, their kids were like, hey, can they come out and play? I'm like, no, we're heading off to X, Y, and Z event. We're heading off to this field trip and that and this and that. And it put us in a position where we're like, we can't do anything that we want to do, really. We have no flexibility in our schedule. We have no free time. And that really kind of put a damper on things. So what I finally realized is that I had to start saying no to people so I could say yes to the things we really wanted to do. So I'm a yes person. I always say, yes, we can do this. Yes, we can do that. When in reality, I really needed to start turning into a no person. So it's okay to say no is number 3. Number 4 is, I wish I had done more research on teaching styles before I even started homeschooling. And it's not because you need to follow a specific pedagogy or philosophy to a T. We personally, if you watch any of my videos, we lean more towards the Charlotte Mason philosophy, but we are not purists by any means. We're probably a little bit more eclectic than I probably lead on in these videos, which you'll probably see a little bit more in my upcoming videos for my curriculum picks for next year, which are coming up soon, guys. They're only a few weeks away, so be prepared for that. But The reason I say that you should probably do research is that it allows you to understand yourself and what you want for your homeschool, what you want to get out of it, what lifestyle you want to lead with your homeschooling, what kind of philosophies you do kind of lean towards. Because when you start picking out curriculum, a lot of them will say, we're Waldorf inspired, we're unschooling, which most curriculum aren't unschooling, because unschooling is a little less regimented with curriculum. But you get what I'm saying. We're unit study, we're traditional school, we're classical. There's so many different styles that curriculums will say we lean towards or they follow completely. And if you're like, hey, we do not enjoy the Waldorf style, then anything that says they're Waldorf inspired probably would not jive with your homeschool. So you don't have to just walk away from that and go find another curriculum that works best for you. It can kind of save yourself some time and frustration when you're trying to find the right curriculum that works for you and your family. Number 5, this one might get a little spicy, a little divisive. I'm going to make a statement and then I'm going to make something that is the complete opposite. 1, homeschooling moms can be some of the most supportive people you will ever find. The best people who are your cheerleaders, who are rallying you on, who you can commiserate within the failures and like lift each other up in the amazing wins. But on the flip side, homeschooling moms can also be some of the most unsupportive, judgmental people in the world. And if you've homeschooled for any length of time and you've been involved in any kind of Facebook groups or co-ops or anything, you probably know what I'm saying. So how can one thing be true, which is the opposite, also be true, right? I just made 2 different opposite statements that are in contradiction to each other. What I mean is when you find your homeschooling moms that are those supportive people that get you, that even though you might have completely different teaching styles, you connect. When you find your tribe, stick to them. Anything else outside of that, don't even give any energy. Just block it out and focus on your tribe, your people, because there will be a lot of negative naysayers who are like, oh, you're not following Charlotte Mason appropriately, or oh, you unschool, ew. Oh, you want to do that math program? That worked terribly for my kids. And that's okay, right? It's okay if one program doesn't work for another kid, but it might work for yours, you know? There's a lot of like black and white thinking, I think, in homeschooling, in the homeschooling groups. Whereas a lot of what reality is falls in the gray. So any of those people that are very black and white about a lot of things, shut them out, move on. You don't need them. You don't need that negativity in your life, and stick with your tribe once you find them. Okay, number 6, y'all. And this one is going to sound so funny coming from me, because if you watch any of my videos, you know what I'm about to say sounds bizarre coming out of my mouth. Don't plan too far ahead. Okay, so now that we've gotten over the shock of me saying don't plan too far ahead, because if you know me, I am the biggest planner you will ever find. I mean, I've planned out almost a high school at this point, right? What I mean by that is I think it's really good to have a long-term plan in place. But if you've watched any of my long-term planning videos, you know that what I've written out, I could scrap it tomorrow and start over and do something new, and I'd be okay with that. That wouldn't hurt me. That wouldn't frustrate me. I wouldn't get mentally upset about that. I would be like, okay, we're going in a different direction. Let's do this. I'll rewrite a new plan. I think it's good to have a plan to follow because it keeps you a little sane, honestly, because there's just so much noise out there in the homeschooling community. Having kind of a runway to look at and say, okay, this is where we're going, it gives me peace, and I know it gives a lot of other people peace. But I know there's some people who would look at that and go, well, if I don't do it exactly like that, I'm gonna have a hard time with that. Like, I'm gonna feel like a failure. And if that's gonna be your case, then don't plan long-term like that, right? Only maybe plan out a year or 2 ahead to give you some peace of mind of what the next steps are, but you're not so far out that you feel like you're regimented within that runway. For me, that runway could go straight or it could go right, and it can completely change, and that's fine with me. But having something in place, I think, brings some people peace, but don't feel so obligated to that initial plan that you started with. This is like when I talk to moms who have a birth plan, like when I had a birth plan, right? My birth plan went about 50% to plan. And I felt terrible the first time when it veered off course with my first child. The second time I was like, all bets are off. I have a plan, but if none of it works out, great. As long as I have a healthy baby at the end, that's all I care about. And you should take the same mindset when it comes to homeschooling. Okay, and number 7, which is my final point, which this year has really rung true for us, It's okay if you're having a really bad day or even a really bad week to just look at your kids and go, listen, we're gonna stop here today. We're not doing any more homeschool today. Let's take a break. Let's go on a walk. You guys wanna go to the museum downtown, or you know what? You guys just wanna have a movie afternoon. We do some popcorn. We homeschool, right? We homeschool for the flexibility. And I think sometimes we get so regimented into our schedules that we're like, well, if we don't push through, we're not going to be, we're going to be behind or not on time. And it's at the detriment of our children. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that if you hit Wednesday and you're just having a bad week, we all have them, right? And it happens with not even just kids, but adults, right? We have bad weeks, us. But if you're having a bad week as a family in your homeschool and it's Wednesday morning and you just look at your kids and you're like, you know what, let's take the rest of the week off. It's okay. And it's honestly probably the best thing for you to do. When you are concerned about the we're falling behind, mentality, don't, because I will tell you, somehow it all works out. You might move one of your breaks later on that you were going to take, maybe cut it in half because you took a half week break here, and then you only do a half week break up there, right? You can make up the time. Also, you can homeschool through the summer, with a lighter schedule, but you can get all that done. But also at the end of the day, I understand there's mental development being behind, like milestones, but in the really grand scheme of things in a whole year, you're not gonna fall behind. You're working to your child's pace when it comes to language arts and math. And then everything else you're learning is it's just the feast. It's gravy. Whatever you get is amazing in your children. So when we talk about coming from a behind mentality, don't stress about it. Trust me, it will all work out in the end. All right, y'all, those were my 7. I'm so bad at this. Those were my 7 aha moments I have taken as a new homeschooling mom, what I've learned from the first year, 2 years of homeschooling, and I'm sure I will have a lot more aha moments moving forward in the future, but those were the biggies that I really look back on, and I was like, gosh, Mary, if I could go back and talk to my younger self and just reassure you, all this is okay, none of this matters, drop all the crazy activities, drop that curriculum, take a break here, don't worry about those naysayer homeschooling moms. This is all the stuff that I wish I could have gone back and talked to my younger self about and just appeased and, made me feel better about. But alas, sometimes we just need to go through the trials and the tribulations to get to the good stuff, and it makes us better people. But if you have any questions about anything that I mentioned, leave those down below in the comments. If you are new to my channel and you love all things homeschooling, definitely hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, y'all.